Hey everybody, Kaysha here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit real quick about Tina Peters' case. So on April 9th, 2024, myself, Maureen Steele, and Ann Vandersteel all went into the state of Colorado to file a petition for redress of grievances. Tina Peters actually also signed this petition. In fact, she actually had exculpatory evidence related to the election fraud that was outlined in the petition that was not allowed to go into the court. The petition was not brought to the floor, and as a result, Tina Peters was unlawfully imprisoned. My father, Dale Richardson, was actually tortured in the state of Colorado to suppress his evidence of treason against the United States, which was based on improper engineering controls which allowed for the spread of the COVID-19 virus, which was likewise created at Wuhan by Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance with the pathogen, which were handed over to the Chinese by the Winnipeg Biolabs. This created the circumstances for widespread election fraud. My father Dale and I are friends of Tina Peters, who has been politically persecuted for standing up for the liberty of all Americans. And she, as a sister in Christ, has been persecuted like I have for standing up for the liberty of all people. In the state of Colorado, women and Christians are being persecuted on monumental levels, and I'm calling for everyone to stand up for Tina Peters in every way possible, including using the Karis Project action plan to compel the state government to put the petition for redress of grievance to the floor so that Tina Peters can petition before the state house that belongs to the people. And if Colorado continues to deny a Republican form of government, we will implore that Congress and President Donald J. Trump initiate Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which guarantees a Republican form of government, to the states and use that just power to intervene and provide what the Constitution has ordained. The time is upon us to come together and stand united as people, and let the world know that we stand together to preserve this perfect union for all Americans and our posterity. That is why, y'all already know, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall.
Hello, and we are back with the part 2 of Cali Corner with Nikki and my daughter Kaysha, all kind of hosting this together. So, yes, anybody want to start off with the kind of thoughts from where we left off?
What are your thoughts on, I only barely saw the post right before we started, but Keir Starmer saying something about UK boots on the ground in Ukraine. What's going on with that? I didn't have time to dig in because I just saw it right before we started.
Well, basically the UK is like wanting to continue to provoke war, right? And so some of the other countries as well. Canada's towing the line. Justin Trudeau's like, oh, we support what's going on over there and sending more money and so forth. And so, it's just a lot of nonsense. And then Jagmeet Singh, who is the leader of the NDP, he actually started to take shots at Trump and the United States for what was going on. And I'm going to pull up a clip here because there's a girl, her name is Jasmine Liney. I believe she's from Winnipeg, if I'm not mistaken. She gives a breakdown of what Jagmeet Singh is saying because, he's an idiot. He is like a spineless jellyfish. He is the worst. Google him. He is like the worst politician ever in Canadian history by a long shot. But let's listen to what she has to say.
I hope that you're taking note right now how corrupt and infiltrated the Canadian government is. Canadians overwhelmingly, over 70% of us, demand an election right now. We have not had a functioning government in Canada since late September, early October because of their corruption. And how humiliating it is for Canadians to have Jagmeet Singh, who is a leader of essentially nothing, to be on CNN today talking about the Trump tariffs as he's this big tough guy. He is the weakest human being in the world who has absolutely no spine. Well, he doesn't represent anybody in this country. He's not government. People don't want him. People hate him here. Yet he's on CNN trying to plead the case for Canada in the most embarrassing, weak fashion. You also have Chrystia Freeland pleading the case for Canada amidst Donald Trump tariffs. Chrystia Freeland is the same woman who put our country in debt over double what they had anticipated. She is the one who froze the bank accounts with a smile on her face of people who were protesting the lockdown measures and protesting the government that is so freaking corrupt. And then we also have Mark Carney, another sign of corruption right here, who is actually Chrystia Freeland's son's godfather. Mark Carney is a man that most people in Canada didn't even know existed up until 3 months ago. Oh, he saved Canada during, the near economic collapse we had back in 2008, the recession. Oh, he saved Canada. No, he didn't. He was the governor for the Bank of Canada at that period of time. Do you want to know who saved Canada during that? It was the Conservative Party who was running the ship at the time. Mark Carney then went on to go be the governor of the Bank of England, where they still are suffering as a result of his policies. Don't believe me? Listen to what their own former prime minister has to say about the guy and the warnings she is issuing to Canadians. Oh yeah, and by the way, Mark Carney, why the hell is he even on CNN pleading a case for Canada anyway? Mark Carney is not a member of parliament. He hasn't even lived here or worked here in over 10 years. He describes himself as European by nationality, not Canadian. This is on video. He holds 3 passports, by the way, and the only reason why he was allowed to run in this election is because right before he announced he was doing so, he bought property in Canada again for the first time in 10 years and divested in all of his other businesses, which you can guarantee he is still very involved in. Oh yeah, and the complete economic disaster, investment disaster that Canada has become was all under Mark Carney's watch, because Mark Carney has been behind the scenes on paper since 2020, advising Justin Trudeau financially. He was just in China last year discussing trade between Canada and China. That's a pretty weird thing for an unelected person to do who has never worked in politics, doesn't even live here, isn't it? So America and every other country, take note of how much these global elitists are panicking. They can't do any of the same media in Canada because most of the outlets here are finally starting to call them out on their BS. So what do? They go on over to the US to try to plead their case because nobody will listen to them here because nobody wants them.
Yeah. I like her.
Yeah, that was good.
Yes. So this is what you have to the north of you. And our politicians, people are getting disgusted. When Justin Trudeau shows his face, people curse him 6 ways from Sunday. He has to walk with a bunch of security. Canadian prime ministers never used to walk around with visible security like that. Now, he has to have them all around him because people want to tear him apart. They want to tear him apart. They can't stand him. And Jagmeet Singh, he's an idiot. He's all he has is, yeah. But this is what you guys have to the north of you, and you wonder why Trump wants to put tariffs on this.
I thought that all of the tariffs that Trump was proposing were reciprocal, that he was proposing the same amount of tariffs to countries that they're putting on us. Is that correct? Does Canada have tariffs on us?
No.
No.
The Canadian tariffs are because of what is going on, right?
Well, he said because Canada was very abusive.
Fentanyl is just pouring across the border, and Canada's government
That's right, it's because of the border
is out of control. They're just
they
criminals.
Worse than Mexico at CPAC, the Canadian border.
Mark Carney, WEF. Chrystia Freeland, WEF. Justin Trudeau, WEF, like so many of their Liberal Party, WEF, right? We're dealing with the big uniparty that's worse corruption than in Washington, and they won't listen to the people. It's really what it is.
I mean, that makes sense to me, because now that everything is interconnected, leaders of different countries have no incentive to just be loyal to their country, because they're looking at the entire world as their chessboard, and they're willing to sacrifice their own country to rule over a bigger piece of the pie, which is why I think you're seeing Western countries allow the mass migration. It's like we're paying for our replacements. And I know people talk about this great replacement theory. I haven't dove into it much, but I know that the left was touting, demographic destiny and replacing conservatives or whatever for a long time. But my point of view isn't based at all on narrative or what I've heard before. It's just from looking at patterns. It makes sense. If now you can just rule over the entire world instead of each person having to fend for their own country, then maybe some countries, are directed to let their own people take the fall. And then on the other end, they'll have their utopia where they're ruling over, fewer people, which the left is already anti-human anyway. They don't care if a bunch of us die. So it makes sense to me that, people like Trudeau and Zelensky and Biden, these people, Biden is a different animal because he's older. He's just been corrupt his whole life, and he's, compromised and owned. But all these younger people, they're a cast of characters. They're like a bunch of young actors who've been brought up for these different roles, and then they're told where to go and what to do. And Trump seems loyal to America, but Trump clearly isn't WEF either.
Well,
yeah, WEF.
And that's the whole point. We need to get things done. And speaking about this whole situation, you look at with what was going on with the Epstein, the whole Epstein release and stuff like that. You look at that, and it's like you have to begin to start thinking and asking what is going on, because even though they didn't do what they should have, which I agree they should have did way more, they still demonstrated something even though they gave nothing. And this was because at the end of the documents, they had affidavits and civil court documents in the FBI file from Epstein. And people are like, well, that doesn't matter. I'm like, yes, it does. That demonstrates to you that they use evidence from civil courts for criminal investigations. And they tell a lot of people that they don't, but they did with Epstein.
Interesting. I didn't follow that. I've been extremely skeptical to the point of cynical that we'll ever know that full list, because I think every time I see some crazy corrupt J6 judge or lawyers or whatever, when they're doing stuff that doesn't make sense to me, I wonder if they're being blackmailed. Now, some are just crazy, but some of them, it seems like a complete 180 to what they were before. And I think my theory on Epstein Island is that it's just this treasure trove of blackmail material, and everybody they have video or documentation of, they own. They do what they tell them to. So it's hard for me to believe we'll ever see everyone on that. It's just.
I agree. I said let's look at a clip of some of the people that would be on that list that we know of that they're protecting.
Well, we know he was on the plane, not only on the plane a couple times, multiple times. He traveled internationally with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was on the plane called the Lolita Express because it supposedly had a bed in there where Jeffrey Epstein had young girls. He has been a friend of his, a continuing friend of his for years and years. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who hasn't spoken to him in many years, over a decade, after he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for bad behavior. So that's the difference there. And I think Americans see the two-tier justice system. But, you know, we don't know. They're saying Clinton has not been to his private island, but he has traveled all over the world with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know.
Is it true that Jeffrey Epstein had a picture of Bill Clinton in the blue dress on his wall?
I don't know if that's actually a thing, but people have been saying this over and over again and showing a picture of Clinton in a blue dress. I wouldn't be surprised that they have something like that, but whether it's on his wall, who knows? I can't.
I mean, it's really not hard to believe Clinton was there. It's harder for me to believe Trump was compromised there, because I think they would have come out with that a long time ago. They could have figured out a way to come out with that without coming out with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, if he was there, they would have finished him with that a long time ago. The whole files, you would have known what everyone ate from the moment they stepped foot. You'd have known what they did in the bathroom. Like, they would have had those out if he was involved, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to sit down and think about this whole aspect of what's going on, because when we look at Epstein, everybody's looking forward at Epstein. But what they're not looking at is what is happening on a local level. Because for example, like, you're looking at the policies of the drugs, right? And so forth. And we're going to look at a clip of this person on drugs. And when you understand that when they're using the government policies, what they're doing is on a local level. When you get drugs and you push drugs, what happens? Human trafficking goes through the roof. What do you have to protect them? Well, you need the same systems on a local level. So if this is happening rampantly on a local level, what do you think is going to happen on a level like Epstein? Because there's like an Epstein in pretty much almost every area of the country running on a local level. This is the way it is. Like, and when you watch how they have pushing these drugs, look at this girl on drugs, and then you can sit down and see how easy it is to get control of something. This is disgusting.
I don't know if you're seeing this. My name is. You can write it down. I'm a girl. I'm missing right now. I'm trying to get back to my best friend's house.
We'll be right there.
House.
What do you want?
Okay. My name is. I don't know if you've ever heard of my name, and I'm on. The only thing I've been on is, and I promise you that you can.
You go to the house.
If you don't believe me,
Listen, can you go to the house?
I'm trying to.
Listen to me.
I'm sorry. I'm so.
Listen to me. Go to the house.
I'm so sorry if I woke you guys up. If you want me to leave, I can. My house is just down there, and I don't feel safe walking because multiple men have stopped by and honked at me, and I don't know what the.
Go to the house next door. Go next door. Don't go to my house.
Okay.
Go next door.
So,
Wow.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Because I don't know how really to decipher what was going on there, because she walked away like nothing happened. And she was like, okay. And then all the emotions stopped. And then I'm very confused with what. Was she trying to get someone to open the door so that they could hurt someone?
The point is that girl is so out of her mind. It is very clear. But when people are that, she doesn't know whose door she's going up to. I mean, we don't know. But in that state, when people are high out of their minds, that's an easy target. Easy target. And they're getting so many people on drugs that are that incapable of their surroundings.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit with Kaysha here. She almost looked like And she was definitely on drugs. I'm very good at spotting that from experience.
Oh, yes.
But she almost looked like either she was trying to get them to open the door to let in another people, because she kept looking to her side. Now, I understand she's saying that men kept, I don't know, I couldn't quite understand what she was saying, but she wasn't looking, if I recall right, she wasn't looking both directions. She just kept looking the same direction. And so, I mean, I wouldn't have opened that door.
No, I
No
wouldn't
way.
either. I wouldn't either.
Gotta call the
But
police.
regardless of the situation, this is the effects of drugs, right? And regardless of whether you with these people or not, like being that baked out of your mind, somebody can do anything to you, right? And if her compadres that were maybe hiding were that baked too, who knows? But you know that.
What did she say she was on? Do you know?
She tried to, on her mouth it said alcohol. She was not slurring her words.
No.
No.
That wasn't alcohol.
No, it was not. It was drugs. She was high as a kite, and it was very, very evident. But when you start seeing that, you start seeing people making bad decisions, right? And whatnot. Let me find this clip here, and we'll get a little bit of what actually happens to people when they're on fentanyl and so forth, because this is what they're pouring across the border like crazy, right? And Canada is the worst offender for fentanyl. They're talking about only how much is getting caught, but you have the longest undefended border in the world. And most of it is pouring through, and it's not getting caught at the border either. And when people are getting busted in the United States, and some of it, they can't trace where it comes from by the time it's changed that many hands. So what you're really actually catching is not even a small fraction, because most people are worried about the Mexicans bringing it across the border. Nobody's going to suspect the Canadians. And it was common knowledge when I lived in Vancouver that drugs were just flowing across the border from down the West Coast. So let me just pull this up here. But yeah, this is out of control. This whole drug thing. Where is it? I'm old.
No worries. By the way, guys, I am looking at my screen, but it looks like I'm looking down because I had to move my computer because my computer almost died. So now it's plugged in, and I'm looking down more than I was. So
Okay.
it's like I keep trying to look up at the actual camera, but
Here we go. We'll play a little bit of what she talks about, the fentanyl withdrawal.
The reality is people do die from opioid withdrawal. They die from the consequences of dehydration, which gives you a sense of just how bad the symptoms can be, that people can have such profound diarrhea and vomiting that they can actually get dehydrated to the point that they die from it. When you think about someone using opioids, whatever reason they start using opioids, which could be for pain relief, it could be for fun or experimentation, it could be for emotional pain relief. What happens early on is that people experience really pleasurable effects generally from using opioids. And so that can be a sense of calmness, of euphoria, again, of relief of any sort of pain, both emotional relief of anxiety and depression and physical pain. But what happens is the body is amazingly capable at relatively quickly recalibrating when there are changes going on in the body. And so over time, the body and the brain gets used to having opioids around. And we see this shift from using to feel good to needing to use just to feel normal, and then needing to use just to not feel sick. And people get trapped in this terrible cycle where they don't feel normal, they can't function, they feel horribly ill unless they're finding and using opioids, often multiple times a day. Opioids bind to opioid receptors in the brain, which are receptors that get activated when you have opioids in your body. That activation leads to a cascade of effects. So opioids block neurotransmitters that communicate pain. So they block the sense of experiencing pain. They increase dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone that allows you to feel happy and have a great mood. They increase serotonin, another sort of feel-good hormone. They block the stress response, that sort of adrenaline fight or flight response that we get. And that's what leads to the calmness, the anxiety relief, the pain relief that people get when they're acutely using opioids. And the reason it matters to understand that, because withdrawal is the exact opposite. So if you think of a seesaw or trying to balance a scale, if you're loading in weight on one side and you're trying to keep balance, you're going to load weight on the other side. And that's essentially what the brain does. So over time, you actually have lower dopamine levels, lower serotonin levels, higher stress hormone levels, because you're trying to balance out the changes that opioids have caused. Now, if you all of a sudden remove that counterweight on the scale, you're going to flip yourself into the opposite effect. And so in withdrawal, you see this flooding of stress hormones. So all of those things that come with opioids, like calmness and feeling happy and not depressed and warm and safe and having pain relief, is exactly the opposite in withdrawal. So for a short-acting opioid, like heroin or now fentanyl, opioid withdrawal often kicks in sometimes as soon as 8 hours, certainly by 12 hours after the last time that people use. And it peaks around 2 to 3 days, but it can last for 5, 6, 7, 8, or even 10 days. First, they get intense drug cravings, which is an urge to want to use the drug that you know will make you feel better. So that's not being able to think about anything else. People start feeling restless, anxious, agitated. They start sweating. They might notice that their nose is running. Their eyes start tearing. They start yawning. They get belly cramps. They get muscle aches. So it starts feeling like really a terrible, terrible flu. If the person doesn't get opioids or use opioids, that gets worse and worse and worse, to the point that people get severe diarrhea, severe vomiting, terrible anxiety, depression. They can't sleep. They feel like they're crawling out of their skin. They get goosebumps. They can feel like they have chills, just this terrible sense of sort of dread and doom in your body. I think we all can identify with sort of basic primal urges, so thirst or hunger, where if you ever were completely starved of food or didn't have access to water, you would do extreme things to relieve that sort of physical drive. And
that's what they're putting onto people, and the extreme amount of symptoms that people have. And a lot of people, I knew people that were addicted to opioids, and it was terrible. It was extreme.
Have you ever seen someone try to get off heroin?
Oh Lord God, yes, it's bad. It is very, very bad.
It's brutal to watch. My best friend, she's been on and off heroin for going on the 4th decade. And I mean, I watched her get off, and one of the dangers is you get off and you're doing great for a while, and then you just, I don't know, once you get off drugs, the hardest thing is learning how to lead a life that doesn't center around drugs. And that took me decades once I quit, once I got off everything. But at least I was a mom, so I had a role to automatically dive into. But some people, that's not enough. And you don't learn how to deal with life stuff. And so then the drugs are a way to numb everything. And that's another thing the left has been like programming young people and people in general, that they shouldn't even have to tackle hard things in life, that life isn't supposed to be hard. And if it is, you're being exploited or abused or oppressed. And so then they don't learn how to deal with these things without drugs. So it's just a never ending cycle. You have to learn how to face hardship and conquer it. And that's more addictive. Once you get on the other side, that's more addictive than any drug, to when you start conquering stuff. But so they don't want people to even know they can. They want people to think it's all out of their control.
Yes, and that's the whole point. They want people dependent, because the one thing I could sit down and say is that drug trafficking and human trafficking, they go hand in hand. And when people are desperate to get rid of their sickness, they'll do anything. And a lot of the people that they do get this stuff on, they end up they get the girls that they go into sex trafficking. A lot of them, they get hooked on drugs, because if they get them hooked on drugs, they know they're not going to run away, because when they run out of money and can't get their drugs, this is disgusting. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it is. And a lot of like the failed coping mechanisms when like they're, intoxicating people, when they're drugging people. sometimes it's not just the drugs, it's the that's a huge part of the problem. Sometimes it's the behavior modification that they've put them through. So it's like they might not even be someone who has a preference for vices of like alcohol or drugs, but they might suffer with the same tendency of, you know, some self-destructive behavior after that, or not knowing that they can win on the other side because, they're suffering with not being able to push themselves beyond what they were dealing with, like emotionally or mentally, which is also unfortunate, because it's kind of like I don't know really what to really call it, but I've seen that as well.
Okay, let's just take a My Pillow break this time, so I get to say something before I actually cut you guys off. We'll be back in a minute.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed, because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
And if you need any My Pillow products, you can see mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942 and use the promo code Karis. Get some good pillow stuff and all the other stuff that he's got over there, like towels and, well, I'm not the cross kind of guy, but if you wear that kind of stuff, go ahead. And the sheets and whatever else that you have there. So let's get in kind of back to what we were saying. So when you look at the government allowing all of this stuff to come in here, you see a tie between the drug trafficking and the sex trafficking, because I've seen this from when I was a kid. Unfortunately, the first time I saw exposed to human trafficking was in church at like 8. Somebody took somebody's daughter and pimped them out, and the guy was, pretty much in tears about his daughter being gone. And almost the whole church knew where his daughter was, and nobody said anything. That made me want to strangle people as a little kid, because I'm like, this is disgusting. I knew what happened. I didn't know where they were until I was older. But just understanding that was done, and I don't like that. And so, and then you see a lot of this rise in like pornography, and you look at what's going on with Pornhub, where people are getting raped and they're putting this online. And a lot of the times people are being drugged in that manner and doing this. And who is responsible for this when you look at the government allowing boatloads of fentanyl and all these other drugs coming in? And like, you've got a criminal cartel, and these guys are all in bed laundering all of this money in the Ukraine and other places like this to destroy our country. And you have to sit down and ask yourself, when I see somebody like Zelensky coming back in here and demanding money, when they're laundering so much money over there, right? And this is some of that stuff that's tied to what Putin's pulling over, and they don't want that stuff to come out. That's why the left is all like, Putin bad, 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 because he's exposing stuff that we know about, right? And Putin doesn't hate the average person in the West. He hates the people that are interfering with his own country in his backyard. He doesn't want that there. But I'm gonna just sit down. Go ahead.
Well, it's clear to me. Like, I don't know what's going on in Putin's head. I don't know what's going on in anyone's head, but it's clear to me that they they make it very clear who they don't want us listening to and who they don't want us saying anything in line with. There's a lot of things I've said that people are like, oh, well, that's Putin propaganda. And I'm like, I've never listened to Putin. And I'm not even getting my views from other people. I'm just thinking things through, and this is what I conclude. But there's so many things that's one of the reasons I left the left. You don't get to tell me who I can listen to and who I can't. The more you say I can't listen to someone, the more determined I am to listen to them, because I'm thinking they know something you don't want me to hear. And I'm a strong enough thinker that I can listen to people that are bad or that have horrible ideas, and I'm not going to just like jump onto that bandwagon. I'm not going to give up my access to information because there's weak thinkers out there, and you don't get to tell me who I can hear. And they do that with. Go ahead. No, I was trailing off anyway.
No. Yeah, no, I agree. Like I was, since I was like in middle school, I think is when we first started hearing about Russia, and a lot of people were complaining about, just the way they operated and things. And I was like, it's one thing when you're talking about something that's, very blatantly wrong. But a lot of the stuff that we were learning, even in school, I couldn't directly apply and be like, okay, well, it makes sense that you're teaching the class to hate Russia. Like, this is very strange. What does this have to do with everything else that's going on here? You know what I mean? So for a very long time, I've seen this stuff happen. And I kind of was just like, well, I don't really care. I'll take a position when something comes about that really needs me to take a position. But now I'm seeing the same things happen. This has been a long time coming. I don't know how it was in the American system, like growing up, because obviously I grew up in Canada, but this is something that they've been trying to ingrain in our society in a very personal way for a long time. And now it's kind of like, okay, well, every time we see this happening, now we kind of see why, if that makes sense.
Well,
yeah. I mean, even in Hollywood, it's not even just the educational system. Hollywood, like ever since I was a kid, Russia was the bad guys. For a little while there, you would see Muslims as the bad guys, but that stopped like quite a while back. Some people aren't allowed to be the bad guys, and some people are the designated bad guys. And I'm always skeptical of that, because it's the actions that are wrong, and the people who did those actions were bad. But if they're all dead and in history, I'm not going to assume that the people that followed them are guilty of the same thing. You need to show me that that's happened again or something. I'm not going to just...
I just want to circle back on something that you'd mentioned earlier about the indoctrination in the schools and the things that they're getting the kids onto the puberty blockers and so forth. And a lot of this is coming from abuse and taking away the challenges of the students. And then when you're thinking now that they're fueling drugs, like that woman Bonnie Harry, they know that California's following suit, they're teaching kids how to safely use drugs in school. They're making it accessible. Now you look at the kids, the average kids, like their ages of sexual activity is getting lower and lower in exposure because of the unrestricted things on the pornography on the internet, that they're seeing these things at a young age, and they're fueling in drugs. Now, a lot of this stuff obviously comes into California with OnlyFans. Now it's everywhere. But I mean, they were doing a lot of this. This woman here, she was in pornography. She got out. She described some of the things that she's seeing with the younger people who are now exposed to the increase in drugs and all of these other things. And they're worse than when she started, and she was terribly abused. But these kids that are abused and now they have drugs, just listen to what she has to say here.
Remember, I was married in my 20s, and he and I traveled on the road together. And I'll say one of the reasons that probably didn't work is because we didn't divide our lives. Okay. He enjoyed partying with the girls. Mm-hmm. He enjoyed us bringing girls back to our hotel. And maybe in the 90s, that was a fun phase of my life. But looking at it now, that would have never worked long term, and that's why it didn't work, because it was putting too much in my zone. It was constantly being Lisa Ann, and constantly having people around me that wanted to talk to me about being Lisa Ann. Yeah. I was like, ugh. Yeah. So it's about, you know, having your own identity. Why do people look at this career any differently than any other? Right. You know, because of what the public thinks, because we feel isolated? No, it's what you make of it. Right. But again, I was raised by an alcoholic father. I know what it's like. I know about abuse and substance abuse and all those things. So probably the triggers that scared me in the business were good for me. Yeah. Because I was so afraid of, oh my gosh, that's going to be me. And that's going to be me. So I just stayed away from everything and everybody. Right. You know, my first couple of years, I didn't even go to award shows, events. I was just kind of a little bit afraid of everybody, because when I did go once or twice, I was like, wow, these people really party. Yeah. Like, really, like, to a point that I didn't understand. Yeah. I mean, I've always smoked weed. Why do you think that is now, though? So I think that drug use is really just an escape. You know, my escape was always that adventure, that wanting to travel, that wanting to get out and do things. But when we start seeing people shooting 10, 20, 25 days a month, that is so grinding on the psyche. It takes from your soul. You know, it's something that I've never let myself shoot more than 5 days a month, and 2 is really my sweet spot. But there was a moment where I had to cancel a bunch of shoots for something, and I remember I shot like 10 days in 1 month. And I remember sitting there at that time and thinking, yeah, I kind of get it. I'm not tempted to do it, but I get it. Yeah. It's the only way to completely disconnect, and that's what you're looking for, and that's where the drugs and alcohol come in. Yeah. You know, we're seeing a lot of cutters right now in the business. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, and so that's been something for me. So that's beyond my generation. Yeah. We didn't do that. So when I first started to see it, I didn't know how to address it. And I've met some girls where it's really bad, like they on their legs, on their arms. And so I just feel the need to ask them, have you gone to see somebody about this? Because this is just something that you want to talk to somebody about. Understand it. Because maybe at that time of feeling pressure, maybe it was financial, and maybe because you're making money right now, you're not feeling that pressure. Yeah. But you did something to scar yourself. So you need to find a way to process that information and know that when you face your next struggle in life, because struggles come and go. Yes. No life is ever without them. Right. That you don't fall back into that. And that's something where it's like, that's the work we need to do. And I tell all the girls this now, money is power. Yeah. The most powerful thing you can do is sort your own mind. So
The point is at the end there, where she talks about the differences with the girls that are coming in now. When you start doing all of these things in the schools, and then she talked about in another thing where with the boys, where they're starting to strangle the girls and becoming more violent because they're exposed to pornography at a young age. What do you think they're doing? When you look at all these policies, when you're letting drugs come in freely, you're allowing this corruption to run rampant. You look here in Canada, like we have no functioning government, none. So how are they going to stop the flow of drugs coming across into your country when it's like we got a ship with we got nobody at the helm of the ship?
And where do these young people go for help? Even the medical industry is captured, the psychological industry is captured. They may go to help for their cutting and their depression or whatever, and be told, "Oh, you're really just the opposite sex. Here, now take this." Or here, get on these psychotropics or SSRIs or whatever. I mean, who do they even have to go to for help now?
Go ahead, Kaysha.
Yeah, honestly, as a survivor of trafficking myself, everyone's always like, "Oh, Kaysha, did you get counseling or therapy, like, for anything that you dealt with?" I'm like, for what? For them to like indoctrinate me and drug the hell out of me, try to kill me, or get me to mutilate myself? Like, which one? Am I going to pick my point? At that point, I'd rather start using crack before I go to therapy. And, you know, I understand like how, like, I understand that people, you know, people will self-medicate and other things, because when you go into these places to get help and they say that this is the help that's actually going to get someone back to normal, or like you were talking earlier, Nikki, about, you know, breaking through to the other end of things, realizing that you can win and all those other things. That's what they're telling you that they're going to help you do. But in reality, they're just pushing people back down a dark hole. So it's like at some point someone has to decide, well, I mean, I did, like, I'm just going to win. I'm just going to find a way to win, and I'm just going to do whatever I want. And if you think that I have a problem, then you try and live my life and fix it. And you can't walk a few days in my shoes. What we have right now as a system to help people is complete garbage. It's a dumpster fire. And the people who are trying to get out of anything, like out of that lifestyle, the porn industry or trafficking or whatever, you're screwed. You're almost screwed by, like, your own strength or the grace of God. If you have the ability to overcome, that's just what's going to happen. And you're just going to live with PTSD. You're just going to, I don't know.
I'm going to play one more clip before we wrap up here. This woman was married to a man in the military. She had addiction issues. I don't know when it was, but she was talking about, I guess this was before a child was born. She was talking about when she was in the military and he was away, that she could not afford to feed her child. And then she got into this situation. But when you listen to what she's saying, because of the things that the government has done, you listen to the way that she's ordering her life. She's saying things, but she's not even realizing what she's saying. I'll just play it and we'll see what happens. But I mean, keep in mind, this woman was an addict. Ex-husband was in the military, could not pay for their food for their child when he was stationed away, even with the assistance they gave, but they're giving money to Zelensky, but they can't feed their own families. And then now she's talking about where she's at now.
What can I do? Also, my nails so cute. I have too many things going on. I am a full-time single parent with 2 kids, 2 small kids. I run a business. I'm trying to start another business. I have a puppy. I have so much to clean. It's just like, how can I do all of my appointments to maintain my looks? Do all the things to maintain my daughter's school, my daughter's care, make enough time for them, but also clean the house, keep my car clean, have time to do all the admin stuff for my business, all the messages every single day, let alone find time to do content. I don't have time for any collabs at all with anyone. I have no dating life, no social life. I have zero social life. I don't do anything besides be with my kids and work. That's my entire life, which I love being with my kids all the time and I love making money, but how do I have to? I just don't know what I can simplify, what I can take out, but I need to figure out how to do it because I just don't have enough time in the day for everything I need to do. How can I simplify my life?
What you're watching here right now, that is the end goal of the leftist policies, is what you see that woman right there. Because what she is describing is slavery, 100%. And she is trying to do something that is impossible for her to do because she's been sold a lie. You can't run the business, do all these things by yourself, and look after your kids, be a full-time president. You can't do that. The only how you can do that is go back to having families. That's the only way that's going to get done. It's impossible any other way. I mean,
so I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years. And then when I left my ex, I was a single mom raising 3 boys. I don't mean to dog that lady or anything, but I never got my nails done until my kids were grown. I never could afford that. I made sure my kids didn't go without, but I couldn't afford any extras. And I never took any government assistance. And I didn't even get child support because my ex said he would have to leave the state if he were going to pay child support. And I thought my sons needed their dad in their life more than I needed that money. So I made it work. And I sympathize with young people right now because the system has gotten so screwed up that it's really hard for them to make it on their own. It's a really hard environment right now to get work and stuff, to get a good paying job. But you got to go without a lot if you're going to focus on being a single mom. And yeah, the ideal is to be married. Obviously, I did everything the wrong way growing up. But yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it. Yeah, to your point, we shouldn't be sending all our money focusing on helping other people while our people are suffering. We should be focusing on Americans, and Canada should be focusing on Canadians, and each country should be focusing on it. I learned that on a micro level with people. I learned that, and I'm grateful now for how my mom was, because we had to do we had to figure out everything on our own. Life was nothing was done for us. We were toughened up very young, and I'm so grateful for that. I would not trade my childhood for anything, because I figured out very early on that I could conquer anything. But forgot where I was going again.
That's fine. Well, all I'm saying is that, for one, you should have never if you're in the service, your family should be able to be fed.
Yeah.
Right? And then secondly, with all of these policies that they're putting on there, they're putting people in drugs. They're not having the same, the adversity that they have to overcome when they're younger, because they're removing those barriers. And then it's making it harder for the younger generation to end up moving forward and overcoming. Yeah. So then it creates that dependency on being in these situations where they're going to be chasing those things. Now, I don't agree with, obviously, the life choices that girl's making, but I understand that there was also a lot of factors that helped her make it. It made it easier for her to make the wrong choices.
Because they're normalizing bad choices. They've removed stigmas, and some things should be stigmatized. And it's not, they've said, oh, you shouldn't judge people. You don't know everyone's situation, but you still should shoot for the ideal. You should stigmatize. If you're capable of working, it should be stigmatized that you're on government assistance. If you're a drug addict, that should be stigmatized. If you're morbidly obese, that should be stigmatized. And we're not saying that you're inferior. We're saying you're making bad choices and you need to make better choices. And that's not to say that we're better. That's to try to make your life better. And we don't do that. We don't stigmatize anything. We don't stigmatize any of the right things. We stigmatize criticizing government, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Sorry. We just want to make sure that we reward the right choices and give consequences. Mm-hmm. Don't take away the consequences for your actions. That's really the point that it is. Because when you look at it, you also want the people say, listen, if you screwed up and you made a bad choice and you want to get out, we'll help you get out. Because it makes more sense to get people out of bad decisions. And it's a better investment, because once they get out and they don't come back, they become very productive. And what people need is to go back to families, because what that woman needs is a family, not trying to figure out a way to plan to do the work of two people. Nobody can do that.
Yeah. And no job is more important for a mom than being there with her kids.
Yes, that is true.
Even when I had to work, I made sure I was home when my kids were home and awake. I made sure they were never raised by anybody else.
Well, you can't pay somebody to love your kids. And the show we had yesterday was a perfect example of that, where it happened in San Bernardino. They took this woman's kids and they were abusing them badly, and CPS, because they ended up making a bad judgment. They're trying to cover themselves. But we're running up on time, so we'll have to close this one down, but we will be back again. It was great to have you, and we will do this again soon whenever your schedule permits. And I will close with a prayer, and then I will give Kaysha, and I'll give you guys both your final thoughts.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you've given us, and help us that we would come together to fix the problems both on a local level and on a national level. And Father, I ask of you this day to bring the men and women together to rebuild their families, their communities, their churches, and their nation, that we can have some protection for the children who desperately need it, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Dad, for the prayer as always. Nikki, do you want to let everyone know again how they can find you and support you?
Just here on X, and I'm going to work on doing little videos and stuff to try to figure out this media stuff. I'm a hermit, so I'm usually just thinking and writing, but I'm going to expand into video. So hopefully I'll be back here soon.
All right, Kaysha.
No, that's good. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dad, again for the prayer. Thanks to Nikki, of course, again for joining us for part 2. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope it's been very insightful. Please go and follow the page on Rumble, Cali's Corner, and hit the bell notification so you can get notified every time she comes on. She's very insightful, like I said in the previous video. And we always love having her on. She's great, actually. And thank you again for your time and considerations. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little bit tired. It's been a long day. And we'll catch you in the next one. But to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, and we will.